All right, so welcome to the deep dive, everybody. Today, we're heading off to a pretty amazing place, the Philippines.
Yeah.
You know, this incredible archipelago
Yeah.
that's bursting with over 170 languages.
Wow.
Now, when you hear a number like that, right, it's more than just like a fun fact.
Right.
For trivia night at the pub, it really hits you that this is a profoundly diverse place culturally. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And what we're going to explore today in
Yeah.
this deep dive is how all of these different traditions
Right.
really impact something you might not expect at first, how beliefs are shared and how communities come together and grow.
Well, I think the thing that leaps out right away is that when you're dealing with that level of diversity,
Right.
any sort of like standardized or one-size-fits-all approach is just DOA.
Totally. Yeah.
And our source, Mosaic of Cultures Embracing, really drives this point home.
Yeah.
Connection in the Philippines. It really hinges on this really localized, hyper-local understanding.
Yeah.
You know, each community, each island, almost you have to look at it as its own distinct cultural universe.
It's like its own little world.
Not this one
Yeah.
homogeneous block.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
And trying to get a meaningful message across
Right.
in a place where you have so many different ways of life, you know,
Uh-huh.
it requires way more
Yeah.
than just basic translation.
Absolutely.
It's a whole other level.
Right.
So our goal today
Yeah.
in this deep dive is to really dig into why this deep respect for local culture
Right.
and tailoring our approach.
Yeah.
You know, what we're calling contextualization.
Right.
Why that's not just like a polite thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's absolutely essential to making any headway
It's fundamental.
in the Philippines.
Yeah.
So let's start, I guess, by
Yeah.
really getting a feel for
Yeah.
this amazing cultural mosaic that we're talking about.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you know, we throw out that number,
Yeah.
170 languages.
Yeah.
But it's not just a list. It's, you know, we're talking about distinct ways of experiencing reality.
Right.
Unique histories woven into the local dialects, deeply rooted social norms.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, each tongue is like a vessel carrying generations of cultural heritage.
It's beautiful when you think about it that way,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
and the source mosaic of cultures really captures this.
Great.
You know, they highlight how each barangay,
Yeah.
which I think for us is kind of like a village or a neighborhood.
Yeah, a local community.
Yeah, it has its own
fingerprint.
fingerprint, cultural fingerprint, shaped by everything
Right.
from indigenous practices.
Yeah.
You know, from way back to the specific festivals they have,
The rituals.
the rituals that mark the important moments you know,
Yeah.
in life.
Uh-huh.
It's really a place where the local is really everything.
It's paramount, yeah.
Yeah, and this is where
And this is where we get to.
this idea of contextualization.
Contextualization. Yeah. It's more than just swapping words from, you know, Tagalog to Cebuano or whatever it is.
Yeah.
We're talking about translating entire concepts and worldviews
Right.
so that they resonate within that specific cultural framework.
So they make sense to the people.
Yeah. You know, those fundamental ideas
Yeah.
have to feel relevant to the everyday lives and understandings of the people you're talking to.
You know, it makes it so clear why
Right.
you can't just have a one-size-fits-all strategy.
No, right.
You can't just parachute in
Yeah.
with a generic message
Yeah.
and expect it to connect
With this incredibly diverse
with this incredibly diverse
group of people.
group of people across such a varied human landscape.
And the source is very clear about this.
They really advise against it.
They say, don't do this.
Yeah.
And you can really see why when you think about,
Especially when you consider the deep historical and cultural roots.
yeah, each community has its own
Each community.
unique history.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just imagine
So just imagine.
for a second,
Yeah.
you know, something that might work really well
Right.
in a modern city
Yeah.
where information is flowing freely
Uh-huh.
and everything's moving fast.
Yeah, social structures are maybe a bit more fluid.
Yeah.
That same approach could totally fall flat
Yeah.
in a small rural barangay
Yeah.
where you've got
Where traditions run deep.
traditions that go back centuries,
Uh-huh.
tight-knit community bonds that have been there forever.
Yeah, it's such an important distinction
Sure.
to make. And the source brings up this,
And they bring up this fascinating idea.
yeah, this idea of contextual theology.
Oh, yeah.
So how do you explain this?
Well, it's essentially framing these core beliefs in a way
Okay.
that speaks directly to the challenges and aspirations of a local community without undermining their cultural identity.
Right. Right.
You know, it's finding that bridge.
Yeah, like instead of just saying,
Right.
love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
Maybe in a community that's struggling with water scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
You frame it as like sharing your precious water with your neighbor.
Exactly.
Is an act of faith.
That's a much more powerful and resonant message.
Because it's real to them.
Because it speaks to their lived reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that brings us to, contextualization in action.
Contextualization in action. Yeah.
So it's not just an idea.
It's not just an abstract concept. It's a methodology.
It's really something you could...
It's a practical way of approaching this.
Yeah, you can put into practice. And the source really emphasizes...
They emphasize that adapting the message doesn't weaken it.
Yeah.
It actually strengthens its impact by making it relatable.
It makes it real.
It makes it real, yeah.
Yeah, and it's about making it feel familiar. To people. And this means being creative.
Right.
Right, like weaving in those local customs and rituals.
Weaving in their artistic expressions, their dances, their music.
Their storytelling.
The powerful tradition of oral storytelling into how beliefs are shared and lived out.
And I think what's really cool...
So what's insightful here
is this idea of like...
of building on what's already there.
Yeah.
Those existing cultural strengths.
Yeah, because they're already strong.
They're already strong.
Yeah.
So if a community naturally expresses itself through song and dance, why not weave that into how beliefs are shared?
Right.
It becomes a natural extension of their lives.
It's organic.
It's organic, not something imposed from outside.
Yeah. And the source gives some really
specific examples.
Concrete examples of
how to achieve that.
How to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not even just about adding like a local flavor.
Right.
It's about truly respecting the wisdom that's already there.
That inherent wisdom that's present in these diverse cultures.
Like the Filipinos are known for their incredible hospitality.
Oh, yeah.
And this idea of bayanihan.
Yeah, bayanihan, yeah.
It's like this amazing spirit of unity.
Communal unity and support.
And everyone coming together to help each other.
It's beautiful.
And the source suggests, hey, let's highlight these strengths.
Highlight how they align with the message you're sharing.
Rather than trying to replace.
Rather than dismissing or supplanting what's already there.
The traditions that are already there.
Yeah, and this point of alignment.
The point of alignment is so important.
I think it makes people feel respected.
It fosters respect.
Yeah.
And builds trust.
And trust is so huge.
It's fundamental.
And speaking of connection and trust.
Right.
The source really dives into the power of storytelling.
Storytelling, yeah.
Which is so vital to Filipino culture.
Absolutely a cornerstone of Filipino culture.
Yeah, and they've got such a rich oral tradition.
I mean, it's how they've passed down history.
Yeah. Wisdom
and values for generations.
I mean, and isn't that what we do in so many different...
Across so many different belief systems?
Yeah, belief systems. I mean, so many of the foundational narratives rely on storytelling.
Yeah.
Parables, accounts of historical events, testimonies.
It's how we connect as humans.
It's how we make sense of the world. And for our listener, storytelling is incredibly effective at taking these abstract ideas and making them concrete and memorable.
Because you can latch onto a story?
You can latch onto a story.
Yeah.
It transforms something that might feel foreign and distant into something recognizable, something engaging.
It makes it real.
It makes it real. And it's not just passively receiving information.
Right.
You're actively experiencing it through the narrative.
And the source even mentions how storytelling for different art forms.
Yeah, like through music, dance, visual arts.
It can really create a living experience.
A living experience for the listener.
For the person experiencing it.
Yeah.
And the examples they give are so good.
Like the parables of Jesus, the prodigal son, the Good Samaritan. These stories that explore universal themes.
Like forgiveness.
Forgiveness, compassion, community.
Yeah.
But when you retell those stories within a Filipino context, highlighting their emphasis on family, on bayanihan, it takes on a whole new meaning.
It becomes even more powerful.
It becomes much more powerful.
And so understanding all of this nuance.
Right.
The local culture.
The cultural landscape.
It really informs how you actually...
How you engage.
Engage with people.
Yeah.
Right? And the source gives this great framework.
A really useful framework
for how to do this.
Starting with that crucial first step,
which is an immersion.
Immersion.
Genuine immersion in the local culture.
So this isn't just,
This isn't just a quick visit.
A drive-by.
Yeah, you got to commit.
You got to really commit.
To understanding.
So that means learning the language.
Yeah, going beyond just basic Tagalog.
Right, really understanding the customs.
Participating respectfully.
Yeah.
In community events. When it's appropriate.
When it's appropriate, of course.
Yeah, and really understanding.
Appreciating the historical context.
That history.
That has shaped each community.
Yeah, that's so important.
And building on that foundation.
Yeah.
The source outlines 4 specific strategies.
Okay, tailored to
specific Filipino contexts.
Let's dive into those.
Okay, so first, you've got your rural barangays.
Right.
And here the emphasis is on leveraging those strong oral traditions.
Like we talked about.
Like we talked about the storytelling, the music, the festivals.
Yeah.
To share those core beliefs.
Yeah.
And using metaphors and analogies drawn from their daily lives.
Makes sense.
So if you're in a coastal community, you talk about fishing.
Right.
If you're in an agricultural village, you talk about rice farming.
Yeah.
You make that connection.
To what they know.
To their lived reality.
It's brilliant.
And building relationships.
Yeah.
Through acts of service.
Through action. Now when you shift to those urban centers.
Right. You got to adapt.
Right.
Because now we're in a more modern, digitally connected space.
Everything's faster.
Everything's faster, yeah. So the source suggests using digital platforms for outreach, having smaller, more intimate study groups in modern spaces, and addressing those issues that are really front and center for city dwellers.
Yeah.
Things like mental health, social justice, through a faith-based lens.
And then we have indigenous communities.
Indigenous communities, yeah.
Totally different again.
Here, the focus shifts to honoring those long-held oral traditions.
Right.
Actively involving the elders.
Because they hold the wisdom.
They hold the wisdom. Right. Encouraging communal forms of worship that align with their existing practices.
Yeah.
And being super sensitive to their ancestral beliefs.
Don't step on toes.
You don't want to step on toes. You want to find points of connection.
Build bridges, not
walls.
Right. Yeah.
And then finally, we've got...
And then you've got Muslim or animist contexts.
Totally different again.
And here, the strategy centers on highlighting shared values.
Okay.
So things like hospitality, the importance of family, a respect for a higher power.
Yeah.
You use narrative-based approaches, maybe featuring figures or stories that are recognized across different traditions.
Right.
And the focus is on building those long-term trust-based relationships rather than pushing for immediate conversion.
Got to build that trust first.
You got to build that trust.
Right.
And this approach really underscores how deep that understanding needs to be.
It's not surface level.
It's not surface at all.
Right.
And it's crucial to remember you can't do this alone.
Right.
The source really hits on the importance of local partnerships.
So important. And building those relationships with the people who are already trusted in the community.
The local leaders, the elders, the influential figures.
They're the ones who get things done. They're the ones who know the landscape.
And the source describes these partners
in a really interesting way.
Yeah.
They call them cultural ambassadors.
Okay.
Because they help navigate the complexities of the language, the customs, the social dynamics.
They're like the interpreters?
Yeah, the guides.
The guides, yeah.
Right, and they also act as like gatekeepers of trust.
Gatekeepers of trust.
Yeah.
Lending their credibility to new initiatives.
Yeah.
So that the community's more receptive.
And ultimately, they're the ones who sustain.
They're the sustainers of long-term impact.
The long-term impact.
Yeah, making sure those positive changes continue even after you're gone.
They keep it going.
They keep it going.
And how do you actually...
So how do you build those partnerships?
Cultivate these relationships.
Well, the source gives some great advice.
No.
First of all, prioritize building genuine relationships. Don't just go in there.
Don't go in there with an agenda.
With your agenda.
Share meals, participate in events, show genuine care and interest.
Be a human.
Be a human, yeah. And seek out what they call persons of peace.
Persons of peace.
These are individuals who are respected in the community.
Yeah.
Who are open to collaboration.
Okay.
And if there are existing organizations, don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, work with them.
Partner with them.
Yeah.
Foster that sense of unity.
And most importantly,
empower
local leadership.
Don't come in and try to take over.
Right.
Support and elevate those local voices.
Let them lead.
Let them lead.
And this leads to...
And this leads to another crucial aspect.
Okay.
Developing culturally relevant resources. Because it's not enough to just translate stuff to the local language.
Yeah.
It needs to resonate deeply.
That has to connect.
With their worldviews, with their lived experiences.
And the source calls this...
Translation beyond words.
Translation beyond words. So it's not just about the literal words.
It's about using imagery and metaphors that they understand.
Yeah.
So instead of using a Western analogy, that might fall flat.
Yeah.
You talk about a bountiful fish harvest
for
a coastal community, or the planting and harvesting of rice.
If they're farmers.
It makes the message tangible and meaningful.
It's real to them.
It's real to them. And in a place where oral tradition is so strong, or where literacy rates might be lower, the source talks about using
visual and media-based storytelling.
Yeah.
And this can be incredibly powerful.
Like how so?
Well, videos, dramas, music.
Yeah.
These mediums can convey complex ideas in ways that are engaging and accessible.
Right.
Imagine a short film with a powerful message, but set in a Filipino village.
Okay.
With local actors, local attire, local customs.
It makes it real.
It makes it real.
You can see yourself in that.
You can see yourself in that.
Right. And they also talk about developing community-specific programs.
Community-specific programs.
That weave faith or shared values into existing customs and events.
So like a faith-based festival.
A faith-based festival that incorporates traditional music and dance. Or a barangay-level outreach initiative that addresses a local need.
Yeah.
While also sharing those core beliefs.
And we can't forget about technology.
Of course not. Technology is huge.
It's everywhere.
And they talk about leveraging technology for outreach.
So using things like social media.
Social media, local radio broadcasts, mobile apps.
Right.
To reach those remote communities.
Yeah, because not everyone's connected.
Not everyone has access.
To the internet.
To the internet.
Right. So maybe a mobile app. That has audio teachings.
In different dialects.
For those who maybe can't read as well.
Exactly.
It's really meeting people where they are.
It's meeting people where they are.
So when you look at all of these threads together, this idea of really embracing the culture.
Embracing cultural diversity.
And sharing beliefs.
It becomes a unifying force.
Instead of dividing.
It strengthens communities instead of dividing them.
And it creates this dynamic.
This dynamic where faith and culture aren't seen as these opposing forces. But as complementary aspects of life.
Each enriching the other.
Each enriching the other.
Yeah, and it allows people to
see their own identity.
See themselves in it.
As part of this larger narrative.
That honors their heritage. Yeah, and as the source says.
When belief is integrated into the culture, it's no longer seen as something imposed from outside.
It's not forced on them.
It's not forced on them. It becomes a personal and internal awakening.
It comes from within.
It comes from within.
And that leads to
a more resilient, a richer, a more connected society.
It's a beautiful idea.
It is.
So the big takeaway here for you.
The big takeaway from this deep dive into the Philippines.
Is that you have to understand and respect.
That context is king.
The local context.
Local context is everything. You can't just come in with a cookie-cutter approach.
No.
You got to understand the people you're engaging with.
You got to meet them where they are.
You got to meet them where they are.
And we've really seen how embracing those unique elements.
Their languages, their traditions, their stories.
It changes everything.
It changes everything.
And so it really makes me think.
It makes me wonder, what other areas of your life, as you try to connect with and understand different groups.
Even in our own communities.
Even in your own backyard. What local language are you missing?
What are we not seeing?
What cultural nuances are you overlooking that if you understood them
could lead
to deeper understanding
and
more meaningful connections?
It's a powerful question to think about.
It is.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
My pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
Until next time.